Have you ever noticed how the conversation shifts the moment you walk out of the room? It's a strange feeling, isn't it? You leave a space, and suddenly the energy changes, but not because things got boring. It changes because you were the thing holding everyone's attention. They talk about you when you're not there because they can't control you when you are. Think about that for a moment. That one simple concept explains everything that has been happening around you lately. If you were truly irrelevant, your name wouldn't be moving through rooms you haven't even stepped foot in. If you didn't matter, no one would bother hiding their interest or pretending they aren't watching. Silence is what people give to things they don't notice, but you get whispers, side glances, and hushed tones. You get this reaction because you changed the temperature the moment you arrived. Picture a spotlight cutting through a dark stage. The light itself doesn't chase attention. It simply exists, and everything else in the room naturally turns toward it. That is exactly what has happened to you. You didn't announce yourself with fanfare or ask anyone for permission to take up space. You simply became visible. You started to glow with a different kind of energy. And the very moment you did, conversations started forming behind closed doors. Not because you were being loud or demanding attention, but because you became undeniable. Your presence became a force that could no longer be ignored, and that kind of power scares people who are used to fading into the background. Here is a hard fact that most people don't like to hear, but you need to understand it. The human brain is wired to fixate on two things: threats and things it deeply desires. Studies show us that people remember faces, names, and actions connected to strong emotion much longer than they remember neutral ones. So when someone keeps repeating your name, watching your every move, and tracking your progress like a hawk, it means you triggered something real inside them. It could be curiosity, it could be envy, it could be regret, or it could even be inspiration. You can take your pick. But one thing is for sure: indifference is never part of that equation. They are not indifferent to you, and that is why they are so obsessed. Chosen one, listen closely to this because it is important. You didn't become the center of attention by trying hard or forcing people to look at you. You became the center of attention the exact moment you stopped shrinking. It happened when you stopped explaining yourself to people who didn't understand you. It happened the moment you stopped chasing approval from sources that were never going to give it to you. That silence you stepped into, that quiet confidence you now carry, made more noise than any loud announcement ever could. And before we go any deeper into this, take a second right now. If this message is already hitting home, I want to say thank you. Thank you, chosen one. Don't forget to pay this message forward by simply pressing like and hitting subscribe. It helps us spread this message to people who need to hear it, and being part of that movement matters more than people realize. Thank you for being part of this force that moves truth forward. Now, let's get back to the truth they are trying so hard to hide. People simply do not talk this much about someone they have honestly moved on from. That is a lie they repeat to themselves to feel better. Real detachment is quiet, calm, and unbothered. What you are seeing is fixation pretending to be distance. They are replaying your words, reinterpreting your actions, and filling in gaps with stories because not knowing the real you drives them crazy. You may have started to notice it in your daily life: the sudden cold looks when you walk by, the awkward energy that fills a room when you enter, the way conversations seem to pause for a split second and then restart differently once you leave. That is not a coincidence. That is not just random chance. That is adjustment. People are recalibrating themselves around a presence they didn't expect to feel so strongly. When you were quiet, healing, rebuilding, and staying low, nobody cared. You blended in. You were safe to ignore. But the moment your energy shifted, the moment you started moving differently, thinking differently, and carrying yourself with certainty, you became a reference point. People started measuring themselves against you without asking for your permission. And here is the uncomfortable part for them to admit: they simply cannot figure you out anymore. You didn't follow the usual script they wrote for you. You didn't collapse when you were supposed to break down. You didn't beg when they expected you to be desperate. You didn't chase them when they pulled away. That completely breaks people's internal math. When something doesn't add up the way they expect it to, they keep staring at it. They keep analyzing it. You are not the center of the conversation because you are perfect. You are the center because you are different. And difference disrupts comfort. It exposes insecurities people didn't even know they were avoiding. So they talk, they speculate, they project their own feelings onto you, and they pretend they understand you while secretly studying everything you do. Have you ever noticed how rumors often say more about the person speaking than the person they are talking about? When they twist your story, it is usually because the real version threatens them somehow. When they try to minimize you, it is because they feel small standing next to what you have become. When they criticize your growth, it is because your success reminds them of the work they didn't do. The universe doesn't spotlight people by accident. Attention always follows impact, and energy responds to contrast. You became a contrast. You are calm in the middle of their chaos. You are grounded where others are panicking. You are focused while everyone else is drifting. That makes people incredibly uncomfortable, and discomfort always demands an outlet. Conversation becomes their release. You didn't steal attention from anyone. You attracted it by alignment. You didn't chase relevance. You embodied it just by living honestly. And now, whether they will admit it or not, you live rent-free in their heads. You occupy space in places you have never even visited. This isn't about ego. This is about awareness. Knowing that you are being talked about doesn't mean you should inflate yourself or get arrogant. It means you need to move smarter, quieter, and more intentional. You don't react to the noise they make. You recognize it as proof of your presence, because the truth is simple. If you weren't the center of the conversation, there would be no effort to hide it. There would be no side glances, no updates passed quietly, and no watching from a distance. Attention always leaks, no matter how hard people try to hide it. And right now, yours is everywhere. So stay steady, stay observant, and most importantly, stay you. What you are witnessing isn't hostility, it is gravity, and gravity does not ask for permission to exist. Before we go any further, pause for a second. If you are still here, that already says something powerful about you. People who aren't part of this conversation never stick around this long. So, thank you, chosen one, for staying present. If this message is already clicking for you, show it some love by liking and subscribing. That simple move pushes this truth into more rooms, more screens, and more quiet minds that need to hear it. Drop a comment with the number 777 if you are ready to understand why your name keeps coming up when you aren't around. And if you feel like supporting the team, super thanks helps keep these conversations alive. It's not about the amount, it's about momentum. Now, here is the transition you need to feel. What comes next isn't surface-level motivation or recycled talk you have heard a million times. We are about to break this down step by step, calmly, clearly, and without the noise. If you really are the center of conversations you never joined, you will feel a pull to stay until the end. Not just curiosity, but recognition. This is where patterns start making sense. This is where silence explains itself. This is where the hidden attention finally becomes obvious. So stay with me. We are just getting started, and walking away now would mean missing the part that explains everything you have been feeling, but couldn't quite name. Number 1, you are the reflection that shatters their comfort. You didn't break their world. You simply exposed how fragile it already was. That is the truth they choke on every time they see you. They don't react to you because you attack them. They react because you exist without pretending. You walk into spaces carrying nothing fake, nothing rehearsed, nothing borrowed from others. And suddenly, the air feels hostile to people who survive on illusion. You don't say much, and you don't need to. Your presence alone presses on the cracks they have been taping over for years. Here is what they will never admit to you. You are a mirror they never asked for. Not the kind of mirror that flatters them or makes them look good. You are the kind that shows posture. You show the posture they have been slouching in emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. You reflect back their insecurity, their shortcuts, and their compromises. And instead of fixing themselves, they aim their anger at the reflection. That is always how it goes. People don't hate the mirror itself, they hate what the mirror reveals. You didn't embarrass them. Their mask simply failed under real light. You didn't threaten their status. Their image couldn't survive the comparison with your authenticity. When something solid enters a room, everything hollow starts to echo. That is why the energy shifts when you arrive. That is why jokes stop landing. That is why fake confidence suddenly looks shaky. You didn't change the room, you exposed it. They will call you intense, cold, too quiet, too confident, or too distant. But let me translate that for you. What they really mean is that you don't play along, you don't over-explain yourself, you don't bend to keep people comfortable. And that drives them absolutely insane. People who rely on noise feel attacked by silence. People who rely on approval feel challenged by self-respect. Your calm isn't weakness, it is pressure. Ever notice how they claim to dislike you, but somehow know everything about you? That is not a coincidence. That is fixation wearing a disguise. They study what they can't control. They talk about you because talking is the only power they have left over you. If they really didn't care, your name wouldn't show up in conversations you never join. Here is a metaphor they would hate because it fits too well. You are a clear glass of water in a room full of dyed drinks. Nobody needs to ask which one is real, and nobody pouring artificial color wants to sit next to transparency. It makes the additives obvious. So instead of changing their formula, they call the water boring, dangerous, or too much. They will say anything except honest, and let's answer the question that is probably already forming in your mind. Why does this keep happening no matter where you go? You go to a new place, and you feel the same tension. You meet new people, and you feel the same weird energy. It's not bad luck, it's consistency. You carry the same truth everywhere, and truth is disruptive in environments built on performance. They will say you are arrogant when you are just grounded. They will say you think you are better when you simply stopped shrinking. That is projection. People accuse you of what they secretly fear. You have become independent, unbothered, and self-contained. You are no longer begging for validation, and that kind of freedom feels like an attack to people who need applause to breathe. You don't mirror their chaos back to them, you don't match their volume, you don't scramble to explain yourself. That refusal is louder than any argument you could ever have. It tells them you are not on their level of insecurity anymore. And that terrifies them, not because you are cruel, but because you are unreachable. Here is the part they never expect. You are not trying to be special, you are just being honest, and honesty has weight. It bends rooms. It shifts dynamics. It exposes pecking orders that only worked when everyone agreed to pretend. The universe does not reward pretending forever. Eventually, something real walks in, and the game glitches. They feel judged around you, even when you haven't said a word. That is because integrity has a way of asking questions without speaking. Your presence silently asks, "Why aren't you living fully?" And instead of answering that question, they resent the one who triggered it. Let's be clear, you are not perfect, and that is not the point. You are real, you own your flaws, you don't hide behind a character, and that authenticity makes people who are performing feel naked. So they label you the problem, they gossip, distort, and try to shrink you down to a size they can manage. But notice this, they never ignore you, they never forget you. They never move on cleanly because you didn't just pass through their world. You disrupted their internal balance. You became a reference point, someone they measure themselves against when no one is watching. They might say you are nothing special, yet react like everything changes when you enter. That contradiction is your proof. People don't feel threatened by nothing. They don't strategize around someone insignificant. They don't whisper about someone invisible. Your impact speaks even when you don't. You didn't crack them. You revealed the cracks. You didn't steal their peace. You showed them they never had it. Instead of rebuilding themselves, they try to paint you as the villain. That is easier than growth. That is safer than accountability. So, if you have been wondering whether it is in your head, whether you are imagining the tension, or whether you should dim yourself to keep the peace, hear this clearly. The discomfort you trigger isn't your responsibility. It is feedback that you are aligned, that you are solid, and that you are walking straight in a crooked space. You are not here to be liked by people who survive on pretending. You are here to be real in a world addicted to filters. And that will always come with resistance, not because you are wrong, but because you are undeniable. They can talk, twist, and watch from the sidelines. None of that changes the core truth. You are the reflection they can't crack. And every time they see you, they are forced to face the parts of themselves they have been avoiding. That is not a curse, that is power. Number 2, you are the receipt they don't want to read. Calling it luck is the fastest way to forgive yourself for quitting. That is the lie they hide behind. And you stand there like proof that their excuses don't work anymore. They didn't fail because the universe was unfair. They failed because they paused too long, doubted too much, and chose comfort when pressure showed up. You didn't get handed anything. You kept moving while they kept explaining. And now your existence ruins the story they tell themselves at night. They say you were lucky because luck sounds harmless. Luck doesn't ask questions. Luck doesn't demand accountability, but effort does. Discipline does, endurance does, and you carry all 3 in your posture, your timing, and the way you don't flinch when things get hard. If they admitted that, they would have to face the truth that scares them the most. They could have tried harder. Imagine this: 2 people stand at the edge of a storm. One complains about the rain and waits for better weather. The other steps into it, soaked and shaking but moving anyway. When the second one reaches the other side stronger, the first one calls it good timing. That is how excuses survive. They dress themselves up as reason. You didn't rise because conditions were perfect. You rose because you moved when conditions were terrible. While they were waiting for motivation, you worked without it. While they were planning, you were learning through impact. While they were protecting their ego, you were risking failure openly. The gap between you didn't appear overnight. It grew every single day. They chose comfort and you chose progress. Here is a question you might be asking yourself right now. Why do they downplay your effort instead of just acknowledging it? Because admitting your grind forces them to face their own inactivity. It is easier to rewrite your story than to rewrite their habits. So they call your work luck. They call your discipline timing. They call your growth connections. They call it anything except what it really was: earned. Imagine watching someone climb a mountain you gave up on halfway through. You wouldn't want to hear about their blisters, their falls, or their fear. You would want to believe they had a shortcut. You didn't. That is what they are doing to you. They don't want the truth because the truth asks too much of them. You didn't make it look easy. You made quitting look obvious. That is why your progress bothers them. You didn't just succeed. You removed their alibi. Every step forward you took quietly erased another excuse they were clinging to. They told themselves they were waiting for the right moment. You proved there is no right moment. There is only movement. Let's talk about pain because this matters. They think pain disqualifies people. You proved pain refines them. While they avoided discomfort, you learned inside it. While they backed away from pressure, you adapted to it. Pain didn't stop you. It trained you. And now they can't stand looking at the finished version without acknowledging the cost. Imagine a blade left untouched, dull but safe, versus one sharpened by friction. Friction hurts, it grinds. It strips material away, but it creates something effective. You didn't avoid friction, you leaned into it. And now you cut through situations they still struggle to enter. They will ask questions they already know the answers to. How did you do it? Who helped you? What was your secret? But they don't really want the truth because the truth sounds boring and demanding. It sounds like consistency, sacrifice, long nights, quiet losses, and starting again when no one was watching. That is not glamorous enough for people addicted to shortcuts. Excuses sound smart until someone proves they weren't necessary. That is you standing there, breathing proof, and that is why conversations about you always feel tense. You didn't win by cheating the system. You won by enduring it, and endurance makes laziness uncomfortable. Imagine this again. A person sitting on a couch criticizing a runner crossing mile 20. The runner is exhausted and injured, but still moving. The critic feels powerful for a moment until they realize they have never tested themselves that way. That realization hurts more than envy. It exposes fear. You didn't just reach a destination. You became evidence. Evidence that waiting was optional. Evidence that effort compounds. Evidence that fear can be outpaced. And once evidence exists, excuses start collapsing. They will say, you had it easier, you got lucky, or you had help. They weren't there for the nights you questioned yourself. They weren't